Okay, so next I'd like to introduce Aaron Purdie. Aaron is the program manager in charge of mental health and community engagement programs at the Health Initiative for Men, HIM. Aaron is also a clinical counselor in private practice. Some of Aaron's areas of research practice interest are anxiety, mental health policy, talk-based prevention methodologies, neurodevelopmental differences, disordered eating, and gay dating apps. Awesome. Thank you. Aaron?
Now's when I stand. Thank you, everyone, for having me. As I was introduced, I'm Aaron Purdie. I'm a registered clinical counselor here in Vancouver, and I am working at HIM, and I'm very blessed and fortunate to be doing that. By way of introduction, I thought that I would start a little bit of storytelling while I leave this lovely image of some of our colleagues up on the board there. One of the things that I love about working at HIM is that everything is connected, that there's this notion that the physical, sexual, social, and mental health aspects of our work are interconnected at all times. So a lot of my interest ends up being talking to my clients about sex, because they want to talk about sex, or bringing conversations about people's social lives into an intake interview for counseling, or when we're in groups, brainstorming about places we can go to become socially involved. So that's some of what really thrills me about working at HIM. And for my purposes today, what I'm kind of sharing about is the different programs that we have at HIM. Now, I will say that formally, I would call them interventions in that they intervene in certain ways, but they aren't formally researched and tailored specific interventions in general, especially on the mental health front. HIM operates partially as a health organization and a nonprofit and a space. It's a concept, it's an idea as well. So we kind of function on many levels at the same time. And we recognize the intersectional challenges of the different communities that we serve. We recognize that our populations are disproportionately affected by masculinity. We know, and the downfalls of masculinity, let's say. We know we're adversely affected in different ways from mental health disorders as well. So I'm going to go through a little bit through our programs. I'm going to do a little bit of story sharing throughout, because where I'm going to open is actually the development and implementation of our new mental health hub, which has just been implemented this summer. So Take Time for Your Mind is a resource that was developed by my predecessor, and at that time it was really just, hey, HIM has some mental health programs. And we wanted to let people know, and the idea was very simple. The concept is take time for your mind. Build your mental health into your weekly regime, because at that time, we knew from community consultations that mental health was the one that folks had difficulty accessing, difficulty conceptualizing, and yet there were some innate gifts in the community. So that was the original version, and this year we decided to do an upgrade because we were suspecting that the brand was somewhat known, and we liked the message. We really liked the idea of simply taking time in your day for your mental health and resiliency, whatever that looks like. So we wanted to celebrate that resiliency. Something that came up a lot, I do a lot of intake interviews at HIM for folks who are wanting to access services, whether that's counseling, coaching, or groups. And what was interesting is that folks would come in and they would say, I'm very depressed, I'm feeling suicidal, I've had a breakup. And then we're going through the intake, and conversely to or what I can imagine other people experience, people are citing depression, but telling me they're going to the gym 5 days a week. So something's going on where there's unnoted and uncaptured resilience. So that was one of my inspirations for moving forward in the way that I did. Not that I did in isolation, I assure you. We also wanted to create a space for some of our practitioners. We know that there are some excellent practitioners. And when I say practitioners, I'm probably referring to mental health practitioners, just FYI. And we wanted them to be able to be found, because one of the things that people call HIM for is that they trust us and they trust our recommendations. So we wanted to create that space in addition. We also wanted to create just good information, good knowledge translation, and on a couple different levels, as you'll see in a moment. For people who may not want to actually seek out counseling right away, but they may just want to read a little bit and have their experience somewhat normalized. And we wanted to demonstrate some diversity in perspective of understanding, which was key. And that came largely out of our focus groups and consultations, where we were requested by our expert reference group and peer reference group to recognize that it isn't just medication. It isn't just counseling. It isn't just going to groups. It isn't just having friends. It may also be traditional medicines. It may also be fitness. It may also actually be sex. And fucking can be a spiritual and mental health improvement experience. They wanted that recognized. So we went ahead, as we often do at HIM, and created a concept. So I don't know if you've seen some mental health campaigns, and this is definitely improving in the current climate, but sometimes they're very, very centered on mood. They're a little bit sad. They kind of show like a sad face and then like a happy face, assuming that there's a binary. So what we tried to kind of play with that. So this is Your Mind is Powerful, one of our images, and this is the lovely Anwar, local guy. And we went through a process with them where we talked to them and we matched some of the core 8 strategies for self-care, or what we call take-time strategies, that guys are likely to embark upon. On the left, you see that Anwar is talking to a counselor. He's a masculine-appearing guy. He's talking to a counselor. And on the right, he's lifting weights. He's doing, and these are very much 2 things that for him are very essential. And for the average guy might want to conceptualize themselves as, well, it may be, can still be who I am and go talk to a counselor. This is culture as prevention. Again, local folks in this image. On the right, we have Tyler, and he is smudging his regalia and cleaning it for a dance at a festival where he's going to share with his family and culture. And he shared that the other part that was really important for him was being with people who are also Indigenous, who are also Two-Spirit. And so that's why we have social time on the left and spirituality on the right. We're going out there, we're recognizing that spirituality is a significant part of how people take time for their minds. This is Your Mental Health is Sexy, and I think it's kind of sexy. Here we have Chad. Chad is doing yoga on the right. We've heard there's plenty of studies and evidence to say that body-based practices can help people move through trauma, can uniquely engage you with practices of mindfulness. And then on the left, I guess, on the left, we have some sexy times. And our, again, theory is that sex is how we combat shame. Sex can be how we connect with people. And we're not stating that it needs to be the specific idea of intimacy. We don't need to teach people how to do that because they might be finding it in that way. And we want to celebrate them where they're at. We want to recognize that this might be part of your mental health regime. And finally, we have Your Resilience is Showing. And here we have Daniel again, and Daniel is preparing a DJ set, being artistic on the right, really getting into the music and taking that time for balance on the left, where he's meditating, he's engaging in practices that slow his body down, practices of homeostasis, allowing his system to relax to combat and negate anxiety, which is also evidenced in the research. How we came up with these 8 self-care take-time strategies was from a significant literature review, which a lot of it is actually housed, again, on the website, condensed into articles based on themes. So again, just more knowledge translation and exchange, different ways of framing the conversation. When you go to take time for your mind, kind of starting off, you can read very well-informed articles coming from the perspective of gay, bi, queer, Two-Spirit men. There's some unique recognitions of trends, tendencies, frequencies of different occurrences. This is the more scientific side of things. We're talking about unique pathologies like anxiety and depression, which are overrepresented in gay male populations, as well as these others. So this is where we started. There will be more as we go along. Then we flipped it, and we had more casual articles, and these are more like friendly, gentle recommendations of things that one might do to improve their kind of being social helps me feel better. And here's some ways that one can be social. And did you know that actually just being around people helps your body's systems relax and become more at peace? This is where we had the chance to play a little bit with more creativity. The science doesn't often and always reflect inclusively of what we know to be true anecdotally as a community. And so we have consultation, and we marry it with the literature, and we came up with these articles. So I would encourage you to go and read them, provide feedback if you'd like. This website was launched in July, which showed any kind of an immediate spike in interest in mental health as well as counseling at HIM. Third component is, third maybe and fourth, this might be two components in one slide, is we actually are introducing folks to our programs at HIM. So under each of those links, there's an FAQ, a how to access, and how to get involved in programs at HIM. So I am going to go into a specific definition of the programs next, but there's also links to our partners and other organizations for people who are looking up this stuff in the middle of the night. We've meta-tagged the website quite robustly with words like suicide, I want to die, things like this, so people can find us on Google in the middle of the night as well. Here's our link to our practitioners. So we've got a way that people can actually scan through for what they might want to work on in counseling, and then base it on the fee structure that they may be able to afford. Because we recognize that while we have a free program, there are plenty of counselors out there, and there's actually lots of guys who can pay. They just want a recommendation from HIM. So that's why we condensed it like this. Moving into programs that we actually have at HIM, we have 8 to 10 sessions of individual clinical counseling that we do offer. It's not based on any particular theme or topic. It can simply be, I'm feeling depressed, I want to talk to someone, I'm feeling anxious, I had this traumatic event. We try and keep it as low barrier as possible. It's a brief model of intervention, so we can't offer long-term treatment of anything in particular. But the counselors are highly skilled, and some of them are even in this room, and I won't point them out, but they're amazing volunteers, and my hope is that their volunteer involvement will enrich their own experience and give them a special opportunity to give back as well. We do have 2 groups currently. We have a trauma treatment group, which is about containment, re-education, relearning, reconnection, and kind of healing from those traumas without necessarily going through as a reprocessing. And then we have a general therapy group, which has been massively successful, and just a great opportunity to be in the room with each other, talk in an open way. Vancouver has a very unique position, actually, the gay men's counselor position, where HIM partners very closely with and can, again, offer unique pathways to entry, and that's the gay men's counselor position through Vancouver Coastal Health. Our health authorities are avant-garde and provocative in that they take risks, and they will implement programs that are rich and very useful, so we're very fortunate to be here. And last but certainly not least is our wonderful Change Advocates program, where we actually train and empower local volunteers to do motivational interviewing, goal setting, plan making. Really, these are all gay guys who are just wanting to contribute back to their community and work with folks one-on-one and dialogue. And this one's more about tangible change, but it's stuff like, I've lost my job, I need a new one, and I'm feeling unmotivated, I need to be heard and seen. And that's one of the values of this program. It's based on the tenets of life coaching, and I'm doing a presentation on that one tomorrow, so keep your eyes on your program. Coming soon, HIM will be implementing an adapted version of GPS, which is Gay Pause Sex, which is actually a specific sexual health motivational interviewing program that we will be facilitating for HIV negative guys. It had these are some of the evidences that they found in the original iteration of the study, which was for HIV positive men. And so we're very excited to be offering kind of a sexual health specific counseling modality, again, capturing on the intersections between those areas of health and the social determinants. How our program works in general and why it works is because of me, just kidding. That's definitely not it. We have a program manager who kind of oversees volunteers, recruitment, liaison, referrals. And then we have, on the top, you'll see the clinical supervisor and the coaching supervisor. And they're able to provide unique clinical oversight that doesn't tax the one position. So I'm able to network and go to meetings and do lots of things within the community, as well as run the programs, because we have people providing unique expert clinical oversight in a very specific way. So we can ensure kind of a high degree of excellence in our programs by doing it in that way. We're therefore able to multiply our counselors, who are all volunteers. We're able to multiply our coaches and therefore see far more people. It's one of the great things, again, about him is this idea of collaboration. I get to go and talk to the nurses who are doing sexual health testing, and we talk about the program so they know that they can contact me, or they can contact Lyndon, or they can contact some of us and what programs they can talk to the guys about. We talk about trends, we talk about GPS, we talk about resources, so that there is that interconnected dialogue. Going through a couple groups now, just again, based on Olivier's presentation, I was kind of seeing that there's this idea that suicide prevention is things like addressing internalized homophobia, reducing social isolation, and increasing social connections. And recognizing some of the cultural, spiritual things that have been unique drivers behind increased rates of suicide, as well as foster resiliency. So HIM has lots of groups, and some of what I think that we do is we create that. And I was talking on the phone with Travis the other day, and he said, it was everything we do in many ways in HIM is suicide prevention. And it was a really interesting thing to frame, because when I think about suicide, I even as a counselor, I get the gift or get to work one-on-one with people, and then I get to go work at HIM, and I'm working with large populations, so I get the gift to see both sides. And yet, one of them, you're probably going to miss stuff. And I was appreciative of Travis noting that a lot of what we do is change the conversation. All our intake interviews are done by gay guys. So our outcomes when we ask them about suicide is actually slightly higher than 1 in 5, which I'm not prepared to speak on what that number is, but it may be that speaking to one's own community changes the way we answer the question. So this is why we're here. Our group facilitators are prepared to meet people where they're at and create spaces that are full of gay guys to shift the conversation entirely. It's like dropping yourself into a little gay world. So some of our groups are based on really just social. Some of them are unique project-based things like gardening. Others are population-based for men 55 plus. We had requests for this kind of group. We opened a talking circle, and we're in negotiations to make this better in partnership with the IDC in St. Paul's. We've got Life Drawing, capturing that artistic side of folks. We've got just drop-in groups in Surrey and Vancouver where people can just go. If they're lonely, if they want to get more connected, here they are. There's a space for that as well. Rainbow Soup Social is a unique volunteer opportunity where they can make soup and give back to their communities. Argentine Tango, you want to get up close? Go to Argentine Tango. Cheek to cheek. It's fun. We've got physical fitness groups, again, knowing that some of the best treatments for depression and anxiety are fitness, learn to run, aging fabulously, and that's the end of my presentation. Fruit camps is like boot camps, but for fruits. Do you have time for a question or not?
So, yeah.
I think I'm the last one.
Does anyone have a question for Aaron? Could be a possible question or not a question. Okay. Yeah, that's not even
Clearing out the audience as I usually do. Thank you. Oh, Philip.
Yeah.
When's that mental health mingle?
So you talk about spirituality. I like that. I'm wondering about religion.
Mm-hmm.
So especially when we talk about certain cultural groups, and in terms of hymns, maybe investment in engaging diverse communities. and creating relevance, I think, at him for diverse communities. Seeing what's being done in terms of like First Nations or Indigenous or Two-Spirited folks, I think is great. The Warriors group, awesome. I'm wondering about other groups. So cultural groups that where actually religion and religious communities are big, and so again, talking about stigma. And I think I'm saying this as like in relation to some of the work we're doing in Ontario and seeing in Ontario, is the degree to which some communities really depend on their religious community. And then if you imagine sort of the challenges of sexuality or gender identity issues in some religious communities, and then the stigma in our communities around religion, any sort of sense of where that might be on the radar at him to sort of look at, I don't know, supporting folks to participate in their religious communities and be welcome in the HIM community, or to support religious communities to be more embracing of queer men.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that question. This came up in the focus group when we were planning for Take Time for Your Mind. And it came up in that I had used a couple terms to solicit some feedback from the community. And one of them was religion. And out of the group of 8 that we had, we got an overwhelming response against the word religion. Now, as a person who grew up in the Christian church, I can relate to the idea that it is part of my culture, actually, that is part of what helps me in my own. If you grow up with prayer, sometimes prayer is your version of meditation, or prayer is your version of smudging. So I'm very much supportive of it. And yet, the group kind of conceded that calling it religious or spiritual practices, they didn't like the word religious. That being said, in the article, I do believe it does say religious, spiritual, cultural practices can be beneficial towards your mental health. And we have had some good connections, actually, with a couple of the churches in the West End who have different queer services specifically. And if folks ask us, we do have that information. And luckily, we're connected to some churches that do have some things. But as for plans to kind of move forward on our own, we haven't gone there yet.
All right, thanks. I guess what I would imagine is, so I know, for instance, like in Vancouver, the African Caribbean Black community is not substantial. So I think last time I was here, it was about 8.8% of the population. I don't know what, it's growing. And then I think there's other cultural communities or racialized communities where actually religion is really important, and the use of the term religion is important. And actually, personally and in the community for a while, I have experienced my own attitudes towards organized religion. But I do think when we're talking about stigma, I think we feel stigmatized sometimes by religion, but I think often religious folks feel stigmatized by us. And then that means those folks who are members of those religious communities, who also want to be part of our community, are part of our community, and want to be seen in our community, need to not feel stigmatized. And so I think it's an interesting dialogue, or sort of create space for actual religion and not just spirituality, because sometimes spirituality is seen as the patronizing way of describing those people who still happen to be religious. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Anyway, I just want to put that out there, actually, as something as part of the because for in Ontario, and like one of the stats we saw was something like, I don't know, help me out here, John, but something like 89% of African Caribbean Black people living with HIV depended on a relationship with their religious group, whether it was like a mosque or a church. And so if we don't say religion, right, and I think if we start to talk about, say, the Sikh community or other communities, and we say we won't talk about religion, I think what it says is we won't acknowledge you. So there is some room to be done, I think, around reaching out and including that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that this, for us, was the start of a conversation. I think when I had my interview with him, I kind of was like, what about religious spiritual health? Because there's these kind of 4 distinct icons. And they were like, get out, you're fired. And no, just kidding. It kind of got me the job, actually. So, but we feel like it's the beginning of a conversation. And And I agree that the more we increase our reach to those communities and the more we make ourselves more accessible, the more that they'll share those stories with us. And they may come to us to say, hey, I want to start a group or something. And then we'll go from there, yeah.
I just want to add one quick thing. British Columbia happens to be the least religious society in North America, along with Yukon. So the negative response to religion could also be informed by the fact that many people just simply aren't religious.
It could also be, yeah.
Just my 2 cents.
I just want to make sure we have a question.
Sure. No, I just have a comment, actually. Okay. So I'm a frontline worker doing STI HIV testing, and I'm sort of embedded in the West End community. And I just have a comment about how often the suicidal ideation, the attempts, the collection of negative things, and it's often not. There's so much resilience and people thinking about suicide every day who don't. And there's all this work that's being done, especially by him, I have to say, that has a positive outcome for people, that because I'm in this community, I see it on a first-line basis. I see people all the time dealing with like heavy-duty shit, and they make it through every single day because they know that there's counselling. They may never use it, but they know that it's there. They know that there's groups in their community that they can go to. It's just that there's no real measure of the preventative work that when people get together to make this kind of organization does.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that comment. It's very hopeful and positive note. I think, do we have time for one more question, or should we have time for one more question if you'd like, and then we'll conclude. Unless you guys have one. I actually have a quick question for Olivier. Did the participants in the study, did they know the photos were going to be shared when they submitted them?
Yeah. So the participant are the owner of the photos. So the photos are not owned by the study. But when they they took the photos, and then actually it's kind of interesting because a lot of them actually used their photo in different means and like posted it on social media and stuff like this. So but they give us the right to use them, and they had the option of saying like where they wanted it to be seen. So do they want it to be part of it? Do they want it to be just part of the research, or do they allow us to use it in public talk and exhibits? So they had the choice of doing that. But the main reason why the men participated into the study, that I heard was like they felt like so alone in their experience, and they kind of just wished nobody would go through the experience that they went through. So really, all of them were so willing to have their photo exhibited, and actually a lot of them came to the opening, and I think it was very. I was not ready for that. I had not really thought about what would be the experience on the participant, but I think it was a very empowering experience for them to come to the opening and seeing like how the photos that they took was actually making a positive impact and being part of a solution, and how people in the crowd was really celebrating their courage and in terms of speaking honestly to photograph in their words, because along the photos at the exhibit, they are the words of the participant as well. So, sorry, I kind of went on a tangent, but I just because I guess I'm very excited about having the work, and I hope people will come and see it. But part of it is just, I think people were just so honest, so they had the option, because we didn't want to prevent people to participate in the project and then not wanted to have their photo shown. So.
Thank you.
And I'll be here with copies of the books if you want to pick a copy out on your way out.
Okay, so thank you, Olivier. Just in conclusion, so Still Here runs at the Galerie Gachet till November 13th, I believe. Also of note is we're facilitating another Queer Safe Talk on January 26th. If you want more information about that, you can come up and see me. I have cards if you'd like to register. So I'd like to thank Olivier, Aaron, and Travis for their work and their presentations, and all of you for coming this afternoon and being part of this discussion. Yeah, Travis, sorry, thank you.
I just want to say a few of us have been meeting quarterly to just share, that's okay, I just remembered, to share kind of what we're all doing around mental health in an LGBTQ context. And so anyone who's interested in joining those meetings, they're very informal, just about information sharing and making connections. Talk to one of the four of us and we'll get you involved. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.